everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so excited to be your guide for this lesson because we are going to learn one of the absolute most essential academic and life skills you will ever develop, and that is the ability to critically compare two argumentative texts. Look, as 8th graders, you are bombarded with information every single day. People are constantly trying to persuade you to believe something, buy something, or do something. Well, today, we are going to learn exactly how to put those arguments to the test.
Here is a quick roadmap of what we're going to cover today. We'll be looking at the power of comparing, seeking the truth, your argument evaluation toolkit, testing the evidence, and finally, how godly learners seek wisdom.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the power of comparing. So, what does this actually mean? Comparing arguments is really just the process of weighing the strengths and weaknesses of different viewpoints to see which is stronger and why. It's kind of like being a judge in a courtroom. When you learn to compare arguments, you are no longer just passively soaking up information like a sponge. No way. Instead, you are actively testing it. You're hunting for hidden weaknesses, unfair biases, and overlooked counterarguments. You are taking absolute charge of what you allow yourself to believe. You might be thinking, well, I only need this for writing essays. But actually, scratch that. You use this skill constantly in your everyday life. Think about making shopping decisions. If you are trying to decide whether to buy the new PlayStation or an Xbox, you don't just blindly trust one commercial, right? You compare the features, read the reviews, and weigh the arguments for both. You do this when navigating personal debates with your friends. And when you're a bit older, you will absolutely need this skill when voting in elections. Comparing arguments helps you spot bias so you don't get tricked by the loudest voice in the room.
Moving right along to section 2, seeking the truth.
I absolutely love this verse from Proverbs 18:17 because it totally hits the nail on the head regarding human nature. The first to plead his case seems right until another comes and examines him. Have you ever had a friend vent to you about a huge argument they got into? They sound completely innocent, so you're totally on their side, but then you hear the other person's version of the story and suddenly things look very different. A single, one-sided argument almost always sounds convincing until you bravely test it against a competing viewpoint.
And that brings us to our ultimate goal. We must seek truth over personal preference. Look, it is super easy to just listen to arguments that agree with what we already like or what we already believe, but as godly learners, our goal is never just to live in an echo chamber. Our goal is to bravely hunt down the actual truth, even when it isn't popular and even when it severely challenges our own personal preferences. Okay, let's get practical with section 3, your argument evaluation toolkit.
Whenever you have two texts in front of you, you're going to ask yourself these 3 critical questions. 1, do they even have the same claim? Like, are they actually arguing about the exact same topic, or are they just talking past each other? 2, which has stronger evidence? We'll see what strong evidence looks like in just a second. And 3, which addresses counterarguments more effectively? A truly strong argument isn't terrified of the opposing side. Make sure you keep these 3 questions locked in your mental toolkit every single time you read. Time to put that toolkit to the test in section 4, testing the evidence. Let's look at a quick example. Imagine you're reading 2 essays that both claim we need to switch to renewable energy. The claims are totally equal, but the first essay just uses vague statements like windmills are really good for the earth and everyone likes them. Well, okay. The second essay, however, uses hard government statistics, explaining exactly how much pollution is reduced by wind farms according to environmental scientists. It's a no-brainer. The essay relying on solid statistics completely crushes the one relying on vague guesses. Quality evidence matters for sure. Now think about balance for our second example. Imagine reading an article about a new school policy. One article ignores all opposing views. It acts like the new policy is absolutely flawless and anyone who disagrees is just silly. But the second article fairly addresses those opposing views. It says something like, while some students worry this policy will take away free time, here is why it will actually help us. That balanced article, which thoughtfully addresses its counterarguments, is always going to be far more credible than a one-sided piece that pretends no other viewpoints even exist. For our final example, we have to talk about style and tone. Imagine 2 authors arguing about animal rights. One author uses an overly aggressive, angry tone. They're calling people names, typing in all capital letters, just ranting. The other uses a calm, impactful, and logical tone. You know, an overly aggressive tone can entirely ruin an argument, even if they have some decent facts. When people are super emotional and angry in their writing, it usually means they are trying to distract you from their weak evidence. The calm, logical text wins the credibility test every single time. Before you jump into your homework assignment later, where you will write a short paragraph comparing two texts, I want you to actively think about how you've already used this skill in your own life. Describe a time when you compared two viewpoints before making a decision. Maybe it was deciding which elective class to take or playing referee for two friends who had a disagreement. Realizing how often you already do this is a real game changer for your confidence when you analyze academic texts. And finally, Section 5. Godly learners seek wisdom.
As we wrap up our lesson today, let's zoom out to see how this academic skill fits into your broader spiritual journey. Proverbs 12:17 tells us, "An honest witness tells the truth, but a false witness tells lies." God values honesty and truth deeply. He doesn't want us to be easily fooled by false witnesses or weak arguments. So this means that when you learn to evaluate evidence, spot weak arguments, and search for the strongest truth, you aren't just doing schoolwork. You are actually practicing biblical discernment. You are honoring God by valuing the truth just as much as He does.
We see this again in Romans 8:6-7. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Keeping your mind spiritually focused leads to true life and peace. A carnal, worldly mind gets swept up easily by angry tones, one-sided arguments, and personal biases. But a spiritually minded student, they seek wisdom. This is exactly why we must root our growing intelligence in God's wisdom and peace. And this brings us right to the core of what we believe here. At HeroesMart Academy, we purposely intertwine biblical morality with your education. Why? Because, honestly, education without morality can hurt people. Just being smart isn't enough. If you're incredibly intelligent but use that to win arguments through deception or bad evidence, you aren't honoring God. Knowledge and intelligence absolutely must be paired with wise, God-honoring choices. We want you to achieve immense academic excellence, yes, but more importantly, we want you to use that capability to constantly pursue righteousness. So I want to leave you with this final thought to challenge you as you step away from this explainer today. How will you use your knowledge to pursue truth today? Whether you're watching a video online, reading a history article, or just talking with your family, remember your toolkit. Seek out the strongest evidence, listen to both sides, and above all, keep your mind centered on God's truth. Thank you so much for hanging out and learning with me today, and I will see you in the next lesson.